Paul maybe couldn't see how God was at work in this process. Paul maybe couldn't have seen how any good would come about through it. But yet, God was at work. You know, it's the same thing for us a lot of times. When we reach out in love to someone, when we show compassion in the name of Christ, we don't always know what the results of that reaching out brought about. We make an investment in the life of another, but we rarely know the difference that it made. In my life of ministry, there have been all sorts of people that have been in worship services or have been a part of different ministries with it. I don't get feedback from everyone about how God used my ministry, my time in a church to help them along their faith journey. But occasionally, I'll get a letter. Maybe months after I left a church, someone will write me a letter telling me about a decision they made to follow Jesus and how they were progressing and maturing in their faith. Or an unexpected phone call from someone who was in the youth group many years ago, and now as an adult, they're looking me back up and they're talking about the importance of that youth group experience and what a difference it made in their life. So often as we make an investment of love and compassion in the life of another, we don't know what the outcome of that act of love and compassion is, what it did in their life. But God knows. The essence of compassion is that we increase and abound in love for one another. In verse 12, Paul instructs them to increase in their love just as they had experienced Paul's love for them. As I said earlier, when Paul first went to preach, they did not readily accept his message. They gave him a hard time, but he continued to be faithful in preaching. And then eventually, some believed. Paul said, even when you didn't want to hear me anymore, even when you didn't want me around anymore, I continued to seek to share with you the love of Jesus. And he said, even as you're facing adversity in your life, I want you to follow my example. I want you to do the same thing, even when someone may not be receptive to your act of compassion. I want you to still do it in Jesus' name. The story is told of a young boy who was lame and was in a hurry to catch a train. And in the press of the crowd, this little boy who was walking with crutches dropped the basket that he was carrying. Actually, he dropped it because another passenger had hurried by him and had knocked it out of his arms. And on the ground rolled some apples and oranges and some candy that he had to eat on the train on his trip. And as this gentleman that went by and knocked it out of his hands saw what had happened, he paused for a moment. He looked down at the kid and he said to him, there's no room for a cripple around here. What are you doing here? And then he hurried on his way. There's another man who had watched the interaction, and he stopped and helped the young boy to pick up what had been dropped. And he also reached in his pocket and took out a silver dollar and gave it to the little boy. And he said, I hope this makes up just a little bit of what the other man did. And then the Good Samaritan went on his way. The young boy who had seldom been the recipient of such kindness called after the Good Samaritan in gratitude and awe. And he said, Mister, please, sir, are you Jesus? The man turned and replied. He said, no, but I am one of his followers. Pastor Alex, can you tell us any other stories of compassion?